Now part of the Darkcast Network. Welcome to Indie Podcasts with a Dark Side. On the morning of March 14th, 2017, Lindsey Nicole Lee did not show up for work at the Lexington County Sheriff's Department. Lindsey was a 31-year-old IT specialist who was well known and loved throughout the department. So when she didn't come to work and no one could reach her, her friend and colleague, Corporal Shannon Lovell, went to her home on Haleywood Lane in West Columbia to check on her. When Corporal Lovell reached the back of the house, he noticed that the door frame had been splintered and the door looked like it had been forced open. Instead of going inside alone, which is smart, he backed away and called for additional officers. Once backup arrived, the deputies then went inside. The house was dark, but they could hear water running somewhere inside. As they followed the sound towards the bathroom, they found Lindsey lying in the bathtub with the water still flowing over her body. Quote, "It was shocking because it was one of our friends. She was laid in the bathtub, almost coffin style. I immediately saw the water running and cut off the water. Her head was turned a little bit and I could see a deep gash in her throat." Lindsey had been beaten, strangled, and cut across the throat. Groceries were scattered across the foyer, suggesting that she had been attacked shortly after walking into the house. Because Lindsey worked for the Lexington County Sheriff's Department, the investigation was immediately turned over to the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, also known as SLED, to avoid any potential conflict of interest. Before investigators began determining who wanted Lindsey dead, they needed to understand what had been happening in her life before she was killed. Welcome, lambs. Welcome to Love and Murder, Heartbreak to Homicide, your weekly true crime podcast telling you cases of relationships that turn to murder. I am your host, Kai, and in today's case, I tell you about a husband who encouraged his wife to transform her life, only to become the very person who couldn't accept the confident, independent woman that she became. Before we talk about it, don't forget to subscribe to Love and Murder on whatever platform you're currently listening to it on. And the best way to actually subscribe is to go to the Patreon, patreon.com/Love and Murder. You can actually subscribe for free, or if you already love this podcast and want exclusive bonus episodes, ad-free and intro-free listening, after shows when they're available, and to become a supporter of the podcast, then join the Lamb Fam over on the Patreon by choosing one of our paid tiers, patreon.com/Love and Murder. It's the best way to subscribe to the show and support it while getting even more cases that you won't hear anywhere else. Well, you might hear them somewhere else, but you won't hear them the way I tell them. Patreon.com/Love and Murder. So with that in mind, let's get back into this case of Lindsey Nicole Lee. Lindsey lived on Haleywood Lane in West Columbia, South Carolina, and had spent several years married to Jason Don Lee, a professional locksmith who lived in Simpsonville in Greenville County. During their marriage, Jason decided that he wanted to lose weight, and he invited Lindsey to join a gym with him. He also encouraged her to begin working out with a personal trainer named Gran Hockley because he was concerned about her weight. Quote, "One day he said he was worried about her and he wanted her to get skinny. He was not happy about her weight and he wanted her to lose weight. So he wanted me to train her." However, while Jason wanted to see physical results, Graham said, quote, "He wanted the results, but he didn't want to put in any of the work. Don't we all?" Jason eventually stopped putting the same effort into exercising, but Lindsey became fully committed. She changed her diet, continued working with Graham, and developed a passion for martial arts. Lindsey went on to lose more than 130 pounds and became increasingly disciplined, confident, and independent. Her dedication was so precise that she would count out exactly 24 almonds because that was the amount she was allowed to eat that day. Lieutenant Olin Sexton described Lindsey saying, quote, "She was something that was unstoppable, and when she set her mind to something, it was going to get taken care of. She was serious about those things, and she always put her mind to it and took care of other people before she would take care of herself." He said that her dedication could be seen in everything that she did. As Lindsey became stronger, healthier, and more confident, the couple's lives appeared to move in opposite directions. Their relationship continued to deteriorate until they separated in April 2016. After the separation, Lindsey continued rebuilding her life, eventually began dating again, and Jason struggled to accept that the marriage was ending. He even remodeled her bathroom one time in an attempt to win her back, but it didn't work. I don't understand the remodeling the bathroom in an attempt to try and win somebody back, but I guess if she wanted her bathroom done, he's like, I'll do it for you. Look at what I could do. I'm handy with a hammer. But so are so many other people. I could just call somebody to do it. But, I guess. Anyway, Lindsey still was like, And by March 2017, their divorce was approximately 1 month away from being finalized. At that point in time, friends described Lindsey as happy and thriving, while Jason was dealing with a completely different reality. So while Lindsey was on the up and up, Jason was under severe financial pressure. He was facing eviction from his apartment and had fallen behind on the payments for his personal car to the point that it was at risk of being repoed. His only credit card had been maxed out, and he had approximately $100 remaining in his bank account. As the divorce moved forward, the marital home was expected to be sold, with Lindsey receiving between $30,000 and $50,000 from the proceeds. He also owed her $1,300 in court-ordered payments that were due by April 1st, 2017. A coworker even said that Jason was scared that Lindsey would have him put in jail if he failed to pay her. On the night that Lindsey was murdered, as investigators began processing the home, they found blood in the foyer where the struggle appeared to have started, and then inside the bathroom where Lindsey's body had been discovered. A towel was found in the living room and also tested positive for blood. And a butcher's knife was located in a knife block in the kitchen, and although the blade did not test positive for blood, blood was detected on the handle. Lindsey had attended martial arts class the previous evening and had been recorded on surveillance footage shopping for groceries at a Walmart in West Columbia after class. The position of the groceries suggested that she had been attacked almost as soon as she had gotten home. They also found Lindsey's wet jacket inside the washing machine with her wallet still in the pocket. The wet clothing and the water running over her body suggested that somebody had tried to wash away evidence after the attack. When examining the foyer and the dining room, investigators found 3 small pieces of blued latex on the floor. The fragments appeared to have been torn from a glove during the struggle. Investigators also searched Lindsey's car and found a bag of marijuana inside the glove compartment. But, according to Lindsey's friends and family, she didn't use drugs, which would track if she's trying to be on the health side, like she's watching how many walnuts or almonds or whatever she eats. More than likely, she's not going to be using any kind of drugs. An autopsy was performed, and Dr. Janice Ross found bruising on Lindsey's hands, arms, neck, and back, which indicated that she had fought against her attacker in a desperate struggle. Small red spots appeared around her eyes, which, I don't know this word, they called it PETECHIAE. I don't know how to pronounce that, but that's what the small red spots around her eyes were called. And that is caused by bleeding beneath the skin, which indicated that Lindsey had likely been strangled. She had also been beaten, but the fatal injury was that 6-inch cut across her throat that severed her trachea. As SLED continued processing the home, agents also began interviewing the people closest to Lindsey. Jason was interviewed at his workplace in Greenville County on the same day her body was found. During the interview, Sled Lieutenant Jeff Kindley noticed the deep scratches on Jason's face. Now, what's interesting is that Jason gave different explanations for the injuries. Earlier that morning, his coworker, Kendall Haskett, had asked him about the marks. Jason laughed and said his cat had been sleeping on him when his alarm went off. According to Jason, the noise scared the animal and caused it to scratch his face. Kendall then joked that he probably would have not kept the cat after being scratched that badly. Now, when Lieutenant Kindley later asked Jason about the same injuries, this time, Jason didn't even mention the cat. Instead, he said the scratches were caused by dry shaving. You were dry shaving your entire face? Your entire face? Okay. But to be fair, though, either explanation could probably have been innocent on its own, but the question is, why would the explanation change? A person with scratches that deep that his friend said something about it would remember where he got it from, you know? Given two completely different stories about these injuries, the morning after your ex-wife was murdered would make anybody, me, anybody listening to this podcast, and especially an investigator, look at you sideways. So he didn't know that they knew that he knew that they had already spoken with the friend and the friend had told him about the cat scratches. So now he's telling them something different and they're just like, So during the same interview, Jason offered an explanation, unprovoked. Like, they didn't ask him, where were you on the night of? They didn't ask him that. He was just like, yeah, so I was dry shaving this morning, as you do, how you shave around your eyeballs and the cracks in your nose and stuff. Everybody does that. Am I right? But anyway, I was dry shaving this morning. And then at 9:59, you just approximately the time of my wife's murder. I just throw a number out there. I was, and he just told them where he was and they didn't even ask him. He said his foot had been hurting, so he took pain medication and went to sleep early at his apartment in Simpsonville. At the time, Jason was dating a woman named Evan McLeod, who confirmed that he had told her, not that she was there, but he had told her that his foot was bothering him. Quote, he mentioned his foot was giving him trouble, that he was hurting and heading home that night and was going to take some pain medication to help and just go to bed early. However, the problem was, Evan said that she had never known Jason to take pain medication. So that's interesting that the night that your wife was murdered, suddenly for the first time you're taking pain medication? Evan also said that she sent him a text message around 9:25 p.m. that night, and he'd never responded. Investigators then started examining Jason's electronic devices and movement records to determine whether his claim that he had been asleep through the night was true or not. Now, Jason wore a Fitbit, and SLED agent April Sykes reviewed the device's activity history. However, and interestingly, the Fitbit showed a 12-hour gap during the period when Lindsey was killed and into the early morning hours of March 14th. Basically, no activity was recorded during that window. So the Fitbit didn't reveal Jason's exact location, so Agent Sykes combined that information with GPS data from his work van and surveillance footage that people usually forget are all around us. But they collected surveillance footage from businesses including Walmart, Days Inn, and Walgreens. They found that at 5:17 a.m. on March 14th, Jason was driving his personal vehicle into a Walmart parking lot in Simpsonville. He parked the car and walked back in the direction of his apartment. A short time later, he came back in his work van and parked next to his personal car. Deputy Solicitor Sean Graham said, quote, "He was moving something between the vehicles. He was trying to distance himself from his car because it was a car he drove to Columbia to kill Lindsey in." When agents questioned Jason about the car, he claimed that it had been repossessed that morning. Really? Little did he know that by that time they asked him this question, they already had their answer. And they also found that the car had had its license plate removed. So I'm thinking that was the thing. Remember that Deputy Graham said that he was moving something between the vehicles. I have a feeling that one of the things he was moving was that license plate. They took off the license plate and put it in his company car. It's so funny, like they're asking him all these questions and they already have the answer and he's just lying his butt off. Now, with all that information, even though they didn't have it from the Fitbit, they can now see that he actually didn't sleep all night in his apartment in Simpsonville like he was saying. Investigators then examined Jason's phone and discovered that his call logs from January 14th through March 14th, 2017 had been deleted. His internet search history had also been erased shortly after Lindsey's body was found. Although Jason attempted to remove that information, though, as people don't know, investigators were still able to recover several searches, including criminal defense attorneys, obituary website, and how to reset passwords. They also recovered searches for news reports concerning Lindsey's death. Another detail found on his phone concerned Lindsey's home. Jason had saved her address under the contact name Hungry Money. So that's literally what he thought about her, that she was just hungry for money. Then investigators examined Jason's finances based on, that mindset and discovered that he was under severe pressure at the time Lindsey died, basically everything that I told y'all about earlier. Then, according to Evan, Jason had made a suspicious comment after Lindsey's body had been discovered. He told her that his financial troubles were over and that he was, quote, going to get the house. Wow. What a douchebag. Then on March 15th, one day after Lindsey was found, Jason contacted the couple's tax preparation consultant. "Sir, your wife was just found murdered," and asked whether their tax refund could be transferred into a different account. Wow. Investigators believed his immediate focus on the house and tax money supported a theory that they had that finances were a motive for the murder. Then, the strongest physical link came when the blue latex fragments, remember they found those, were tested. And they found a very high concentration of Jason's DNA on 2 of the fragments. The amount was so significant that experts said that it was consistent with him having worn the glove. Lindsey's DNA was also found on the pieces. This placed DNA from both Jason and Lindsey on the same torn glove fragments in the area where investigators believed that the attack happened. When SLED searched Jason's Greenville apartment, agents found a backpack containing, you guessed it, a package of blue latex gloves. The gloves matched the color and material of the fragments left inside Lindsey's home. Investigators also tested the controls of Lindsey's washing machine. However, this is interesting, Jason's DNA was not found on the dials, although DNA from an unidentified person was recovered there. Now, investigators had forced entries, the groceries scattered across the foyer, the glove fragments that had both of their DNA, and the matching gloves in his apartment, the marijuana bag. Oh, and you know what I forgot to tell you? The marijuana bag actually had his DNA on it. Not hers, his. I don't know how I missed telling you that. But anyway, what else did they find? They had the scratches on his face, which was mixed with the two different explanations for the scratches. His Fitbit with that gap, which never happened, the GPS, the surveillance timeline, his lie about his car being repossessed, his deleted phone records, the deleted and recovered internet searches, and basically you can see he was in financial ruin. So this is all the evidence that investigators have while he's still sitting there lying. So when Jason did give them a DNA sample to run it for the blue fragments, and it came back saying, oh yeah, his hands were on this, then SLED obtained an arrest warrant. And before being taken into custody, Jason reportedly joked to a coworker at the locksmith company saying, quote, "I might leave here in handcuffs." So he already knew what was coming. On March 17th, 2017, only 3 days after Lindsey's body was discovered, Jason was arrested and formally charged with murder and first-degree burglary. And a judge denied him bond. He returned to court on May 15th, 2017 for another bond hearing, but he was also denied bond for a second time and remained in custody while the case moved towards trial. However, during all of that time, Jason said he did not kill his wife, and he maintained his innocence the whole time. On Monday, November 18th, 2019, more than 2 years after his arrest, the trial started in Lexington County. The prosecution, led by 11th Circuit Solicitor Rick Hubbard and Deputy Solicitor Sean Graham, planned to prove that Jason was the one who murdered Lindsey because of hatred, jealousy, and financial desperation, and then attempted to wash away the evidence. They argued that Jason resented watching Lindsey thrive while he struggled financially and emotionally. According to the prosecution, the murder was not the result of a random burglary or an unexpected confrontation. Jason had planned the attack, traveled from Simpsonville to West Columbia, picked the lock on Lindsey's back door, and waited inside the dark house for her to return from martial arts class and grocery shopping. Then when Lindsey entered the foyer carrying her groceries, Jason attacked her from behind before she had a chance to put anything down. They used the scattered groceries as part of their reconstruction for the crime and explaining to the jurors what happened. They argued that Lindsey dropped them while trying to defend herself from someone who had been waiting for her inside the home. Dr. Janice Ross testified about the injuries found during Lindsey's autopsy, showing that she had fought against the attacker and tried to protect herself. She also talked about that final blow that killed Lindsey. Attorney Graham then asked the jury to consider the level of violence used against her, saying, quote, "Would a complete stranger inflict that kind of violence on Lindsey Lee? No, but Jason Lee did." The prosecution argued that the brutality of the attack showed that it was personal. In their view, this was not someone entering the home only to steal property and then panicking when Lindsey returned. Afterwards, prosecutors said Jason moved Lindsey's body into the bathroom and placed her in the bathtub. He then turned on the water, hoping it would wash away blood, fingerprints, DNA, and any other evidence that could connect him to the murder. So you just running water you thought was going to wash all that away? Does he know how anything works? Also, that bathroom had particular significance in the prosecution's case because that was the room that Jason had remodeled during the marriage. Quote, "Who had pictures of the remodeling project in that bathroom? Jason Lee did. He had remodeled that bathroom to win her back, and it didn't work." So the prosecution argued that when the reconciliation failed, Jason used that same bathroom as the place to leave Lindsey's body. The jury saw evidence showing blood in the foyer and the bathroom. They also heard that a towel was found in the living room and tested positive for blood, and they went through all of the evidence that investigators had found. The prosecution argued that Jason wore gloves because he understood forensic evidence and wanted to avoid leaving his fingerprints or DNA inside the home. But then he thought water was going to wash away just DNA. Like, I wouldn't even give him that credit for understanding forensic evidence. Then they said that the gloves tore during the struggle, leaving behind the evidence that, he was initially trying to prevent. So they said because he wore those gloves, as you could see here by these blue fragments, this explained why Jason's DNA was not found on many other surfaces inside the house. According to the prosecution, he had been wearing gloves while he handled Lindsey, moved her body, and attempted to clean the scene. As for the bag of marijuana found inside Lindsey's car, friends and relatives testified to what I told you. She didn't use drugs. Prosecutors argued that Jason planted the marijuana because he wanted investigators to believe that she had been robbed and killed by a drug dealer, which is so freaking random. Like, just what? Quote, she didn't do drugs, according to her friends and family, so why was Jason Lee's DNA found on the bag? Because he put it there. The prosecution also reminded the jury about the scratches on Jason's face. He had told Kendall that his cat had scratched him, but then he told Lieutenant Kinley that the marks came from dry shaving. So the prosecution said, yeah, all of that, those are lies. The most believable thing was that Lindsey was fighting for her life and scratched the crap out of his face. Then they told the jury about the statements that Jason had given the investigation, and they said that when agents first interviewed him, he volunteered his alibi before they even asked for it. He also told them about his hurt foot and taking the pain medication and going to sleep early. But they said when Evan texted him, she couldn't reach him, and they said they brought all of this up because this proves that Jason made up this sleep-in all-night story because he already knew he needed an explanation for the hours surrounding Lindsey's murder. So that was his explanation. They said that his Fitbit data did not prove that he was asleep because there was this 12-hour gap, which Agent Sykes testified that the gap was unusual based on all of Jason's previous Fitbit records. There had never been another interruption that long. This was the only time. So the state argued that Jason deliberately either removed or disabled his device so it wouldn't record that he went from his house all the way to West Columbia or the physical activity that would have been involved in fighting with Lindsey. And by the time the prosecution finished presenting its case, the jury had heard about everything that I already told you in this case from beginning to end. They heard everything. The prosecution argued that the evidence did not represent a collection of coincidences, as I guess Jason would want you to just sit there and believe, but they said it showed planning, motive, opportunity, and an attempted cover-up. Now, for the defense, led by attorney Jim Snell, of course, they presented a very different view. His attorneys argued that the evidence did not prove that he was the person who broke into the house, killed Lindsey, placed her in the bathtub, and attempted to wash away the evidence. Quote, what happened to Lindsey is horrible and very tragic, but Mr. Lee is not responsible. Instead of calling witnesses, the defense focused on the gaps and inconsistencies it believed existed in the state's case. Attorney Snell argued that the prosecution had not produced a witness who saw Jason enter Lindsey's home or attack her. No surveillance video showed him traveling to Haleywood Lane. No confirmed murder weapon was tied directly to him. No confession had been made, and no eyewitness placed him at the scene. The defense also challenged the prosecution's claim that Jason carefully planned the crime. If he was organized enough to pick the lock, wear gloves, remove his Fitbit, delete records, wash Lindsey's clothes, stage evidence, and move his car, why would he leave pieces of his DNA-covered gloves scattered across the floor? I don't know. What I want to say is that doesn't make sense, because I would then argue if he did all of this, Why would he just leave her running in water in a bathtub, thinking that, without soap or any kind of cleaning agent, that's just going to wash DNA away? Also, he could have been in a hurry to get out of there. And, he was trying to look for the pieces of the glove that fell off, or he didn't even realize pieces fell off. He probably thought, the gloves were just torn. Because when you see torn gloves, you don't immediately think pieces fell off. You just think torn gloves. Oh, crap. I might have my DNA all over the place. Gotta pack up, gotta leave. So I don't think I would put it into him being a mastermind. And if he's such a mastermind, why would he do this? It's more, he probably wasn't thinking about it, as evidenced by leaving the body under running water. The defense also argued that the blue gloves found at Jason's apartment were used for hunting. Having similar gloves in his possession did not automatically prove that he wore them during Lindsey's murder, which I agree. Just because he had the same gloves, those gloves, literally everybody buys those gloves. So, but it's just a progression of coincidences, right? Then the DNA evidence, while important, still required interpretation. So the prosecution came back with that the high concentration on the latex was consistent with Jason wearing the glove. So the defense was saying, yeah, the gloves were found and they had the same gloves in his backpack, but that doesn't mean Jason wore it. But you know what did mean that Jason wore it? His DNA, the high concentration of his DNA on those blue fragments. So they were saying that this was not an incidental transfer. And they made sure to point out that this was not an incidental transfer, because then the defense had come back and was like, well, Jason and Lindsey had been married and they shared property. So of course, that's why Jason's DNA is all over the house. They did share life together. Attorney Snell also focused heavily on the washing machine. He said that Jason's DNA was not found on the dials or the controls, but that doesn't mean that he didn't use, maybe one of the gloves didn't have a cut in it, or you could have taken off the glove and used the folded glove to turn the dial. That means nothing. But they said, okay, that's what you're saying. But remember, an unidentified person's DNA was found on the knobs, not Jason's. And Attorney Snell described this evidence as, quote, as close to proven innocence as it gets. According to the defense, the unidentified DNA suggested that another person had been inside Lindsey's home and had used the washing machine. The defense also pointed out that Graham's DNA was found inside the house as well. And Graham was like, oh, wait, how did I get into it? Look, my DNA was in the house because I attended a party before Lindsey's death. And he also then took this time to point out that he regretted that he had focused on her physical training without teaching her more of self-defense. Quote, if I had taught her, she might have had a chance. I didn't think she needed it, to be fair. And Attorney Snell said, see there? Graham just said he was in her house at a party. That means there were more people in the house. So this DNA could belong to anybody. The blue fragments could belong to anybody. The blood that was found through the house could belong to anybody. The DNA on the marijuana bag could belong to anybody. It just so happened that you saw Jason's DNA on it, but, he used to live here. So I rest my case, Your Honor. Obviously, I do want to point out that he didn't say all of that. That's me saying that based on all the information that came up. I know some people hate when I do that, but that's just how it's playing out in my head. But also, these are attorneys, and I'm not making anybody think that I'm putting any words in anybody's mouth, because ain't nobody going to come sue me. There. So Attorney Snell said, finding someone's DNA inside Lindsey's home did not necessarily mean that that person had killed her. Then they talked about the scratches on Jason's face. Attorney Snell argued that they did not look like the marks caused by a full set of fingernails. Therefore, the prosecution could not prove that Lindsey inflicted them during the struggle. The defense maintained that the state was relying on the fact that Jason gave two different explanations rather than proving where the scratches actually came from. Then he turned to the Fitbit data. He said just because there was a lack of recorded activity, that does not mean that Jason did this. It just could mean that, he wasn't wearing his watch. Or it stopped working, it stopped recording, or it was inactive for any number of reasons. And then they told the jury that, the prosecution, in their opinion, treated the absence of information as proof of murder when it's not. Then they said of Jason's searches, looking for criminal defense attorney after an estranged spouse is murdered may look suspicious to some people, but you can argue that an innocent person being questioned by police, that person might also want legal advice. And then, the fact that he searched for obituary websites or news concerning Lindsey's death didn't establish that he had killed her, but he could have been trying to get an update on the case because, she was his wife at one point. So the defense's overall position was that the state had taken every unusual action and interpreted it in the most incriminating way possible. According to Attorney Snell, suspicion was not proof beyond a reasonable doubt, which is true. Jason actually chose not to testify, and the defense rested immediately after prosecutors finished presented their evidence. The prosecution responded that the defense was asking the jury to examine every piece of evidence separately while ignoring how strongly the evidence supported one another, which is what I was thinking. Separately, I could understand the defense. Like, everything they said made sense. Separately. But all together, that's one crap ton load of a coincidence pointing to the same person. So if you think about it, the blue latex fragments put Jason and Lindsey together during a struggle. The scratches appeared the morning after the murder. He didn't have it before. I could understand if it was like the morning before you showed up to work with scratches on your face. Then, okay, that wasn't the morning after anything like this happened. His Fitbit stopped recording, which it has never done it before, but it does it on the night and the morning that Lindsey was murdered. His car was moved at 5:17 a.m. after he lied that it had been repossessed. He deleted his phone and internet history within the time that this had happened. He never did that before. He searched for attorneys and obituaries. He planted marijuana. Now, she never did drugs. Suddenly, there's some drugs in her car, but it's only his DNA on it. So it's just like everything coming. Oh, and my bad. Right after your wife dies, you go and try and get money. It's just like everything together separately at different times. Yeah, I would argue that the defense is absolutely right. But all of this together in one short time span? During closing arguments on November 22nd, Attorney Hubbard again described the murder as, quote, just so vicious. The prosecution asked the jury to find Jason guilty of murder and first-degree burglary. Attorney Snell reminded the jurors that the defense was not required to prove who else killed Lindsey. The state was the one who carried the burden of proving that Jason did it. So, after about 1 week of testimony and nearly 2 hours of closing arguments, the jury received the case. Deliberations began around 12:30 p.m. on Friday, November 22nd, 2019. And at 1:32, which was an hour and 2 minutes, the jurors returned to the courtroom. And it was such a short time, so that doesn't sound like good news to me. And they found Jason guilty of murder and first-degree burglary. Well, it depends on how you look at it, if it sounds good or not. So I guess being that I did suspect him of murder, I guess it sounded good. But I guess if you were Jason, that hour and 2 minutes of deliberation didn't sound good. Then the court moved into sentencing very shortly after the verdict. But before Judge Thomas W. Cooper Jr. imposed the sentence, Jason stood and maintained that the jury had convicted an innocent man. Quote, The only thing I have to say is I didn't do it, and I will be appealing this, and I will be coming back on appeal. I did not murder Lindsey Lee, and I want that on record. I am an innocent man. I did not murder her. Jason said he would continue fighting the conviction for as long as necessary. Quote, I am innocent, and I did not kill Lindsey Lee. I will be appealing my case, and I don't care if it takes 20 years. I will prove my innocence. Judge Cooper then sentenced Jason to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Attorney Hubbard said that the verdict will allow Lindsey's loved ones to feel some relief after waiting more than 2 years for the case to reach a conclusion. Quote, this man brutally took Lindsey's life, and today, I know her family and her friends will sleep a little easier knowing the man responsible for taking Lindsey for them will spend the rest of his life in prison. Sheriff Jay Kuhn thanked SLED for taking control of the investigation during an emotionally difficult time for the Lexington County Sheriff's Department. Quote, SLED stepped in and helped us during a very difficult time. Because of their continuous hard work, Lindsey's family can hopefully gain some sense of closure as they continue to grieve. We'll just remind you that the defendant in this case handed down 3 sentences that night. He gave Lindsey a death sentence, he gave 2 life sentences, 1 to her immediate family and 1 to the Lexington County Sheriff's Department's family. And we will be living with that for the rest of our lives. But you know, the difference is that Jason is living with the consequences of his own choices, while Lindsey's family and friends are living with the consequences of a choice that he made for all of them. While the verdict answered the legal question of who killed Lindsey, it did not erase the effects of her death on the people who knew her. She had been someone who put other people before herself and committed fully to every goal she set. She had been rebuilding herself and preparing to move forward. Jason saw that progress, the upcoming divorce, and the money connected to the sale of their home, and responded with violence because he could not accept losing control. Jason, to this day, continues to deny that account, but he remains incarcerated at Kirkland Correctional Institution, serving a life sentence without the possibility of parole for Lindsey's murder and the first-degree burglary of her home. This man wanted his wife to lose weight and couldn't handle the person that she became when she did. He decided to be too lazy and follow her in bettering himself, and that was basically no longer good enough for her. So, what are your thoughts on this case? Do you think the evidence proved that Jason was guilty beyond a reasonable doubt? Or do you think that there was enough unanswered questions to leave room for doubt? Do you agree with the argument that the defense brought forward? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you'd like even more Love and Murder, head on over to the Patreon, patreon.com/Love and Murder, and become part of the Lamb Fam. One of the bonus episodes currently available follows the heartbreaking case of 7-year-old Athena Strand, whose disappearance sparked a desperate search before investigators uncovered the devastating truth. And when I say devastating truth, that episode was so hard for me to cover. And another bonus episode explores the case of 2 nursing aides whose relationship led to a deadly pact that left multiple elderly patients dead inside a Michigan nursing home. Join the Patreon, patreon.com/Love and Murder for bonus episodes, ad-free listening, exclusive content, and early access to select episodes, all the while helping support the podcast and keeping these victim stories alive. Patreon.com/Love and Murder. And before you go, if you found this case infuriating, then please share it with someone you think would be interested. Every time you share an episode, you're helping keep these stories alive and helping me reach more listeners who care about victims and their families. It does only take a second, but it makes a huge difference. And until next time, let's remember that it's, say it with me now, all love and no murder, y'all. Thank you so much for listening. If you did share the episode, thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much for your support. And the members of the Lamb Fam, thank you so, so much for believing in love and murder and joining the Lamb Fam. And I will see you in the next episode. Bye.